Once again this week we are going through questions that have been sent in concerning biblical issues. An issue that I think there's been so much debate, so much discussion about throughout the ages has to do with Pharaoh back in the book of Exodus. Pharaoh is obviously a godless man. He is the king of Egypt. God sends Moses into Egypt to bring out the people of Israel to come to the promised land, the land that had been promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And in order to do that, in order for them to take the land, they had to leave Egypt and go to that land. And of course, they had become, during these hundreds of years being in Egypt, they had now become slaves of the Egyptians. And the Egyptians have become very dependent upon the Israel slaves, the Jewish slaves, for their work. And they were quite comfortable with that. And so when Moses comes and says, let my people go, they want to go out to worship God in their land, Pharaoh and his folks were certainly not very happy about that. So they resisted at every level. Pharaoh represents the whole government of Egypt and is the main decider of all these things. And the issue comes up about this is that on numerous occasions, it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. For example, in 17:3, the Lord says, "But I will harden Pharaoh's heart with stiffness, that I may multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt." So the Lord made it very clear that Pharaoh was not going to be accommodating to Moses' plea to let the people go. And the Lord was going to harden his heart so that he would not let them go, in order that his wonders, his great signs would be seen by the Jewish people, who would now be able to trust in Yahweh, the true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So far, so good. But the question is, why would God harden Pharaoh's heart? And it goes on further. Would Pharaoh have hardened his heart anyway, or is this just an example of eliminating free will? Well, what we find in our text is there's an equal number of times when it says that the Lord hardens Pharaoh's heart, an equal number of times with it saying that Pharaoh hardened his own heart. For example, chapter 7, verse 13. Yet Pharaoh's heart was hardened with strength, and he did not listen to them. That's 13. But in 8:15, as we come over there, a page later, 8:15 says, "Then Pharaoh saw that there was relief, and he hardened his heart with firmness and did not listen to them." In chapter 9, verse 34, another page over, it says, "But Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunder did cease, so he sinned again and hardened his heart with firmness, he and his servants." So what do we make of this? It says clearly that God hardens Pharaoh's heart, and it says firmly that Pharaoh hardened his own heart. And if you added up the times that God hardened his heart and the times that Pharaoh hardened his own heart, I believe you come out to the exact same number. So this helps the people that want to believe in the sovereignty of God, that God chose, and those that don't want to believe that says Pharaoh chose, and so we're off to the races in debate. So how do we reconcile these things? I think the best way to reconcile it is this. Pharaoh's heart was already hard. He was an unbeliever, living in darkness, resistant to God. He wanted nothing to do with the Lord. He wanted nothing to do with letting the people go out of Egypt. And he resisted anything God did, even these miraculous signs that ultimately devastated Egypt. He continued to resist the Lord at every point. But the fact that he was resistant to the Lord is reinforced by the very nature of God himself, who hardens him. In essence, the Lord gives him exactly what he is. He doesn't change Pharaoh's will. He doesn't go against Pharaoh's will. He simply allows Pharaoh to be what Pharaoh is. And Pharaoh, in this case, is a man who resists God, who hates God, who wants nothing to do with God. And the Lord simply turned him over, I think, to his own hardness of heart. He acts out, in other words, his own nature. The Lord doesn't go against the will of Pharaoh. The Lord energizes and hardens the nature itself. The Lord doesn't cause Pharaoh to sin. God does not cause people to sin, but he allowed Pharaoh to live out his very nature of sinfulness and resistance to the things of God. So it's not either or. Pharaoh was a man already resistant to God. God continued to allow him to live out the life that he already had and live out the heart that he already had as well.